Okay, if there's no questions, people should feel free to ask about also current things and.
Yeah, sure. I didn't want to spend much time about all kinds of details what's going on now, but.
But I have a historic question.
Okay.
Do you know did the Venetians create the Ottoman Empire as a counterattack against the Andalusian Renaissance?
No, and the Ottomans came, like as an Ottoman state, came a bit later after the Crusades. But Venice was still active, it's true, there were connections. But what the Venetians managed to do is actually they recruited the Mongols as an eastern front, because they had mobilized the Crusaders, these crazy fanatics in Europe, to attack the Islamic State. I mean, first of all, they destroyed the legacy of Charlemagne, and then Western Europe became divided into very, very small princelets and smaller and smaller states. But the attack against the Islamic State was organized with the Crusaders, but what they managed to do is to recruit the Mongols to attack the Islamic states from the east. You know, it's like they, clinching.
Two different things? Where are they two different things?
Yeah. I mean, the Venetians had people and tradesmen, and including Marco Polo is the most known of them. He traveled to China, and he stayed actually with the Mongol Khan many years. But they had their channels, because you had this whole Silk Road, the old Silk Road, the trade from Asia to the Mediterranean was going through the Islamic region. So they wanted to take over that or destroy it. So if they can't control it, they can destroy it. So they controlled trade in the Mediterranean, but they could not control Asia. So their solution to that was to destroy. I mean, their idea is to destroy all the rivals, but the Islamic State was the biggest one of them. And then they used the Mongols. The Islamic State was already splitted in many different parts, like in Persia and Iraq, the Turks, the Mamluks in Syria and Egypt. So there were lots of splits, but they used the Mongol hordes to they trampled over civilization simply, and you had epidemics spreading and so on. But with the Ottoman Empire, it's suspected that they created the split between the Safavid in Iran and the Ottomans by this Shia-Sunni divide. It's a long story, but the Safavids they were not Shiites. They have this Shia-Sunni. But the Venetians are suspected to have created that dispute to split the Ottomans or the Eastern Mediterranean from the rest of the Asian states. But that's how it goes. You manipulate religion and use it for that. And then the Ottomans, they had this very strong trade with Venice. The cannons they needed to use, they all coming from Venice. There was a famous painting, I think, by Bellini, the Venetian ambassador going to the Sultan. There's a huge painting. I think it's Bellini. So they had very strong ties to the Ottomans. But they have no permanent friends. They have only permanent interests.
This connection, okay, if there's other questions they should say, but in this connection, why do you think that the Turkish today have somehow in their mind this idea of that they can be re-established as an empire if they go along with this policy of destroying, for example, Syria?
Yeah, something very strange happened, because the Turkish, the new government, the APK government, the so-called Islamic government, when they came to power, they were very promising. They were very open. They played a very important role in the diplomacy in the region. I mean, the peace process with Israel had collapsed. The Turks were the only ones who were trying to keep the connection to all the different parties. They also played an important role in keeping a good relationship to Iran. So the situation in Iran does not develop. So they had very good initiatives the whole time, and they were focusing on the economic aspect of developing Turkey as a power instead of knocking on the door of the European Union the whole time as the beggars. They had the ideas that, okay, Turkey can become an economic power in the region instead of a small power in Europe. But then somewhere deep inside this ideology, and I think they were more opportunistic than strategic when they went with the war in Libya and now with Syria. Because in the last few years, they had enormous amounts of money pouring from Saudi Arabia to Turkey as so-called investments, and also from Qatar. But it finances mostly the businesses and supporters of the Erdogan party. But at the same time, you have Turkey playing the carry trade, because like Brazil, Turkey was opening up its financial markets with very high interest rates, so money was pouring from low interest rate in Europe and the United States and Asia into Turkey. So it's hot financial money which has been invading Turkey and creating an image of Turkey becoming a major financial center, but it's not based on real development on the ground. So Turkey suddenly became, propped up with money, but also a lot of Saudi money and Qatari money. And that is one way, as people try to explain why they went with the Saudi line against their previous diplomatic line. What they thought in Syria is going to happen is that the war there it was not a war in the beginning, but that the Assad regime will collapse in 1 or 2 months. And then they can take over. There's enormous trade between Syria and Turkey, and also between Turkey and Iran. Iraq and Turkey is very, very dominant in the region. So they thought that they can take Syria as a prize for collaborating with this regime change policy. But of course, the Syrian government did not collapse. And then they had to go to Plan B, which is using military force, but not direct like in Libya. By sending militants and weapons inside Syria from Turkey, Lebanon, and Iraq. And now they have created a situation of civil war. And now the Turkish leadership are confused because this can fire back against them. Because now Turkey has to become part of the war. The Turkish army and diplomacy and economy will be involved in an open war with another country. And they did not think that was not in the plans. So they are now in a very critical situation, while NATO and others say, to Turkey, okay, you should go and help these rebels, but everybody else is, they are not there on the border. Their nation is not there. And then in Turkey, you have also the problems of the Kurds. You have a large Alawite group, which can, the Syrians are not using that, but it can explode. So Turkey, the Turkish leadership has been very, very opportunistic, and that it was very stupid to go along with it. But this is part of the ideology, the so-called Muslim Brotherhood ideology of an empire, but it has a Turkish touch. I didn't really trust people who said, this new government there, they want to relive the Ottoman dream, that the Ottoman Empire will come and dominate. In the beginning, I thought that was a bit strange because their acts were not in that direction. But now I start to suspect that the leadership of the AKP have that inside themselves. But it will fire against them. It will hit back against Turkey. So it's a very dangerous situation. Also, the Turks know that the Russians are blowing hot air in their back. Because if they get in confrontation with Syria, then they will be in a confrontation with Russia. So Turkey is in a very bad situation. Also, the attacks on Russia from the Caucasus, they all start in Turkey. All the Chechenian, in the 1990s, the Chechen movement were moving from the refugee camps on the Turkish, Armenian and Georgian borders in that area. And the Turkish military was supporting that before the Islamists came in as part of the NATO policy. So they were sending militants and arms inside the Caucasus to attack the Russians. And now these attacks are starting again. As we saw last week, the Mufti of Tatarstan was hit by 2 suicide bombs. His deputy was killed. And these 2 people were known. I mean, these are well-known Muslim leaders in Russia and in Tatarstan, but they were attacking the invasion of these Wahhabi groups with a lot of money, but also with a very extremist ideology. And also this whole Hizb ut-Tahrir network, which comes from London. The leadership is in London of the Hizb ut-Tahrir movement, which is very, very active in Asia and the Caucasus and Central Asia and Western China. So the Turks are putting themselves in a very, very bad situation of a confrontation with their neighbors, but also with Russia, and internally too.
I mean, it's they have not learned the lessons from the Trojan War.
Mm-hmm.
Don't accept nice free gifts.
Yeah, also.
Because this is what, don't you want this price of Syria? Oh gee, I mean, in the old days the other thing you would do was you would take all of these prostitutes, which had all kinds of diseases, which were then given as gifts to the incoming armies. And then the incoming armies would dissipate through disease. So don't ever take these free gifts, and it's a real, it's the same. I mean, we have in Denmark, we have the same problem in some, because Denmark was given a very special role in the world. That by Denmark participating in the Iraq war and Afghanistan war and Libya war, Denmark was suddenly part of the coalition of the willing, one of the trusted allies, one of the knights around the round table, together with the United States, with Britain, you know, these old players that's been around. And Denmark was invited in. Don't you want to be one of the knights at the round table? You know, gee, how important we are suddenly. And the problem is, this gift you got will bite you in the. I mean, this is also this is why this subject that has been written a lot about. Don't make deals with the devil.
Exactly.
In Danish, you say, if you give the devil your little finger, he'll take it all. It's just a question of time.
Exactly.
And this is what countries like Turkey and other countries really have to be aware of right now, because they think they get this prize, and what they really get is a disease. I mean, also you mentioned this with Pakistan.
Pakistan, exactly. This is what you know, during the Afghan war. You know, when the United States and the British and their allies decided to hit the Russians at their soft belly, where it hurts, where they are most vulnerable, by financing the Mujahideen, first the Afghani themselves, and then the so-called Arab Afghans. I mean, the governments in Egypt and Algeria, all these countries, where they were told, release the Islamists from prison, send them to Afghanistan. Don't you want to get rid of them? Send them to Afghanistan. And then they created this whole new movement of the Islamist so-called jihad movement, which was financed and organized by British, American intelligence with Saudi money. But what happened in the process is that Pakistan accepted the role which Turkey is accepting today. So Pakistan became the conduit, the vehicle for moving all these mujahideen, the religious leaders, the money, the arms, and also drugs coming out. So what happened in the process of the war, 8-9 years, is that because these operations were run by the Pakistani military intelligence mostly, is that you had enormous corruption of that institution of the government. I mean, Pakistan was a powerful nation with very strong institutions, disciplined institutions, mainly again under Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, the father of Benazir Bhutto, but he was overthrown by a military general just immediately before the Afghan war starts, Zia-ul-Haq. But what happens is that you have corrupted the whole Pakistani institutions. And therefore you have many different factions inside Pakistani military for religious reasons, for intelligence reasons, for money reasons, who are working against each other. And they, of course, have connection to the Saudis. The Saudis established these so-called Islamic schools inside Pakistan to train and educate people in Afghanistan. This whole Taliban movement was started in Pakistan and to invade Afghanistan later. But what happens is that you have destabilized Pakistan itself. Now that you have all these assassinations, you have, presidents being overthrown, prime ministers being overthrown, corruption here, corruption there. So it's not only Afghanistan which was destroyed, it was Pakistan has been, destroyed to a large extent because of accepting this deal. And this is the danger for Turkey. So as Tom said, don't accept free gifts. Try to build something yourself.
Yeah, for Turkey more. Turkey is the only country, it's not from this area.
Mm-hmm.
Turkey is, a few groups from Turkmenistan and this Asia, and then by name of Islam they make the Osmanic and they went to Byzantium and Turkey, they have problem with Armenia, with Syria, with Iraq, with Iran, with Greece, all around them.
Yeah.
I think one day they will have very sad
End.
end.
Yeah.
Really.
No, that's the danger. Turkey exists as a nation state, no problem. I mean, of course, the Turks came from another part and settled there, and then pushed away groups here and there. They threw away the Greeks because, the Greeks themselves they tried to play a dirty deal with the British during World War II, and then they were hit mercilessly by Ataturk. But with Ataturk and the modern Turkish nation, now it's a nation state. You can't say the Turks are not really from that area. They should go back to the Central Asia.
They don't have history, like Kurdish, for example. Turkish people inside Turkey is not majority. 40-50 millions Kurdish, 10-15 millions Alawi, and this Alawi belong to Syria more than Turkey.
Yeah, but that's where the danger is. We are talking about nation states. The Alawites in Turkey, they are Turks. They are citizens of Turkey.
Yeah.
The Alawites in Syria, they are citizens of Syria. They can have a friendly relationship, but you can't say for geopolitical reasons what we can do. We can recruit the Alawites in Turkey to hit the Turkish state. That's where the British come in and say, "Oh, we will help you." You want to organize the Alawites? No problem.
But it's going to happen. It's like now happened in Syria.
Yeah.
We are going to export it to them also.
Yes. So. That's where people get manipulated to play the same game. What you do, you say you step outside the game, but unfortunately, of course, you cannot win the game inside Syria. The game will be won politically outside by determining and organizing people in America and Europe. Say, you are playing a dangerous game. We will all be killed if you go on being stupid like this.
Yeah.
There is a way out. So try to be reasonable, learn something from history. We can get out of this problem. People can become free, but there are other ways we can do it. So that's where besides knowing something about history, you have to have a good intention. What do you want to do with that knowledge? It's like, the Turks are not coming from that area, but that does not mean that you use that knowledge in order to...
Syria, it will not, but now they will use. Because
they
are also using this one. For example,
but the Syrians have...
is exporting democracy.
Yeah.
So it's very funny.
Yeah.
But I think also, it's like Hussein is saying, because right now in Syria, it's like the Syrian people right now is fighting a heroic battle because there's this onslaught. You have this enormous mass of money, and it's not going to stop. Saudi Arabia just came out and said that all Saudis now have to mobilize to support the fight against the Syrian regime. Yeah. So they're going to throw. It's a little bit. It's like you have these stories in the history books of a city which were occupied, and the only thing in the end they had to make cannonballs from gold in order to have something with to shoot with. And this is the Saudi policy right now. They're going to throw all of this money in trying to destabilize Syria.
And also, if that's the war, I think Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Turkey, they will get back more than Syria.
No,
because Iran, it will not also
so
just look at them.
But the point is, Syrians have to keep fighting. It's like you have to hold the line, and it's very important for the rest of humanity right now, because if Syria breaks,
yeah,
it's like you have a series of dams, and the first ones have already been broken. Now it's the Syrian dam. If the water breaks through the Syrian dam, there will be even more power rushing down for the next dam, until you get global thermonuclear war. If the Syrian nation can keep this with a terrible price, because the price will keep going up. It's a tough battle. But if you capitulate, it'll get even worse. So it's like you have nothing you can do except keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. But at the same time, the attacks will keep coming, and there's so much invested that as long as Obama is still president, the attacks will keep coming. So therefore, you have to hold the line, simply hold the line, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. And if you die in the process, then you are proud of the fact that you at least fought for something worth fighting for. And then we have to win the fight in the United States and around the world. We have to turn the battle there. If that is not done, then Syria and everybody else will go to hell, and that's the way it is. The good news is that we have a fighting organization in the United States. Right now, this week and next week, we are putting all our young people and also our skilled diplomats are in Washington for full-day deployments. They go into the Congress. They have targeted areas where they go in for Congress early in the morning. They take meetings with congressmen. They go to all the different things to create a phase shift in the Congress of saying, now we put Glass-Steagall up for a vote. We go with the Glass-Steagall, and that will make Obama totally explode. We create the circumstances where Obama is severely broken before the September 3rd Democratic Party convention. Because that's the way we can avoid getting Obama or Mitt Romney as the president. And both of them will be fatal for the world. So so that's the one thing. And then we have this other added factor you really have to appreciate, that on July 3rd, Financial Times of London came out for the Glass-Steagall policy, which means they came out backing Lyndon LaRouche's policy. That's how you have to view it. That the policy that Lyndon LaRouche has said the United States should go for, that Russia under Putin has endorsed and is backing, fighting for, is now having the support of a powerful part of the British elite. And this is not just for fun. There was just announced also that there's will be a committee to discuss how to change the whole financial system in Britain, with 5 members from the House of Lords and 5 members from the House of Commons. And when we check the list, three of those 10 members we know as people that has been very strongly out fighting for Glass-Steagall. And this is important because this is a global battle, and that's how you have to view it. I mean, when will these attacks on Syria stop? It will attack when this war faction is defeated. Can they be defeated? Yes, they can. Why? Because if they win, everybody loses. And this is why you have some of our enemies in London, people we have been fighting for the last 30, 40 years. Financial Times is not our friends. They are now joining together with us in this fight. Why? Because they want to survive. Has this happened before? Remember that there was a guy called Neville Chamberlain, Prime Minister of England. going to Munich to talk with Hitler, making great deals, and suddenly the British decided that we cannot win with this, this will also defeat Britain, so we'll go to the guy we hate the most, Franklin D. Roosevelt in the United States, and we'll make an alliance with him. Why? Because we want to survive. But you have to, you should not, don't get caught in all of these games like, we can mobilize this group against, this is the British way. It never works. How do you then fight the British? You do it on principles. You do what you should do, you're truthful, you know what you're up against, you use military strategy, of course, you know who you're fighting against, but then at the same time you keep building relationships with other nations based on principles. Right now Syria is being backed up by Russia, by China, by India, by other nations around the world, the big nations of the world, not these small countries like Germany or Britain or Denmark or whatever, you know, but nations like China, India, the population of the world. And so you do, and then you have to keep doing that, and then eventually, if there will be a future, it will be based on that, and then the other nations surrounding Syria at some point, when we end this, will be grateful to Syria for having saved them too from going into this nightmare. And that's how history works. And therefore, I mean, war is a terrible thing. When you're a young person and you read the history books, you know, you imagine, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could be part of an important war, you know, go out there and fight for something. Once you're in war, it's a little more dirty and bloody, and it's not so ideal, it looks different. But that's the way it is, and once you're there, I mean, you have no choice. You have to fight for what is right, and if you die in the process, you die in the process, but at least you died for something that was worth fighting for, instead of wasting your life being a prostitute for some slave to some oligarchical master.
Sure.
What was the connection between Khomeini and the British?
What happened is that there was a fight between the Shah and the British first. You know, the Shah was brought to power by the British after Mossadegh's, Mossadegh tried to nationalize the British Oil Company in 1952. And he won a big fight in The Hague, in the International Court. Personally, he went there and he defended Iran's right against the British, the Anglo-Persian Company, and he won. And he was going to nationalize the oil company because the British were taking the oil and giving 15% only to the Iranian people, or to the Shah, the king. So they made a military coup with the help of people from the United States and the CIA, and they brought back the Shah. Now in the beginning of the 1970s, the Shah got the idea that he is a great Persian emperor, and he should not be working under the British. And that he's going to do the same thing, try to take the oil and use the oil for developing Iran, including the building a nuclear power project for Iran. You know, the Bushehr project was planned then, at the beginning of the 1970s. So in 79, the 50-year contract with the Anglo-Persian Company was going to expire. And the Shah had decided in 79 he will not prolong the contract, and that the Iranians should take control of the oil. And then the mobilization started to overthrow the Shah. Now there was a big protest movement in Iran against the Shah because you know, it was a dictatorship of sort. But what happened is that the British did not help the Shah. I mean, they had very strong presence in Iran, and even the Americans. They did not help the Shah to fight back. And then what the BBC did, and all the Iranians know, all Iranians, just talk about the British, they know, yes, we know. They did all the dirty work. And actually the BBC became a propaganda machine against the Shah and in support of Khomeini. So it's like today, Al Jazeera and all these things. At that time, there was only BBC. Everybody was listening to the BBC. And they made big moves to support, actually, the Khomeini line and the protest movement against the Shah, which included even the communists. But who cared, you know? Everybody wanted to overthrow the regime, and then we can sort out things. But they made a major intelligence operation, actually, to get rid of the Shah. And they told the Shah, you know, if you want to leave the country, we'll help you. But we are not going to help you if you stay and fight. And the Shah's own intelligence, organs, they were controlled by the British, trained by the British, and they gave up the fight, and they allowed the Khomeini and actually the communists and the Mujahideen Khalq now to take over Iran. And Khomeini had all the support he needed, both propaganda and on the ground. And the Shah was forced to leave the country. I mean, the Americans told him, "You can come here." It does not mean that Khomeini and these other people were agents. That's a different question. Khomeini, he had his own mission, but then they always welcome that type of help. It's like the war in Afghanistan. The Mujahideen say, "Well, we hate the Americans, we hate the British, we hate those and that, but if they give us weapons and money, then we make a deal, no problem, and then we fight them afterwards." That has been always the case. And not because they love each other, but because they say, we are pragmatic, we're going to use them. And then the others say, well, we were going to use you, and so on. So it does not be misunderstood. I mean, those religious people, it's not about religion. What I don't like is this mixing of politics with religion and using religion and religious movements as actually political movements who are then being used as tools of imperial policy. That's where the problem is. It's not about religion or Islam per se, but it's about those people who want to use religion as a tool for political control because they have some ideology, some fantasy, and they are, sorry.
Yes, I was just thinking about what is being said here, let's say between the lines, is that the revolution, which actually culminated in 79, was not a, let's say, genuine revolution, but actually it was a supported revolution from the outside. But what I was thinking about was, if you compare, let's say, the Iranian nation to many other nations like Afghanistan, you could say Egypt, Syria, or whatever, you can see that many of these nations was influenced but even controlled and had a very deep kind of cooperation with foreign countries, which is very unique with Iran, which is not the case there. And I think that's maybe why they are so much after them, because they openly admit it. Many countries like UK, US, even Israel admit that Iran is the country which is the most closed for us. We have so, let's say, less intelligence about that country, which is holding us back from attacking it. So for me, it's a sign, or you can say proof of that it's an independent country, which are not dependent on any.
What happened is that, for those who are thinking strategically, is that what happens if you have an Islamic government in Iran, and then Saddam Hussein suddenly at the same time makes a coup in Iraq, who's a Ba'athist, socialist, secular, and then with a bit of pushing from the Saudis and others that the Persians are coming back to take over Iraq, then you will automatically have a war between two of the most powerful nations in the region, which they can bleed each other to death. And this is what happened to Iran. I mean, immediately after the revolution, they started attacking Iran, and they started attacking the revolution. They don't care about Khomeini. What they are worried about is that the Iranian nation has an identity of itself. That's an independent nation. It has a history, it has a culture, and it's aspiring to use its resources both natural and human, to develop. That's what they hate. They don't care who is in power. As long as the nation has that identity, then they will crush it. But what they had calculated is that you will have a war with Iraq automatically. And then they would support one side, which was Iraq. But when Iran became desperate in the middle of the war, because all their weapons were American weapons from the Shah period, then the Iranians themselves said, well, we will buy weapons from the devil. That's where the Israelis come in, that's where the Iran-Contra comes in with the arms deals.
Israel, I think, is a very, very limited, you can say, consignment of weapons which come from Israel. Very, very limited.
Yeah. But everybody was ready to help.
Important to mention that.
Yes.
Because actually what Israel did was providing some very few spare parts, which was, you can say...
No, but what I'm talking about, you have the whole banking and trafficking system, which was global. And this is what the Iran-Contra showed, is that these are not national things. This was a huge empire, working together. Banks, arms dealers, intelligence agencies, government agencies working behind the screen to make sure that the Iranians get some weapons, but not to win, but to keep the war going. And this was what the most expensive war, and the arms trade around Iraq was one of the biggest, operations of arms trade in history concerning two nations. But they destroyed Iran, but not totally. But then they came and destroyed Iraq. Yes. But they delayed Iran's developments many, many years. Iran now is standing on its own feet. In spite of the Islamic tendency, the Iranian leadership, they still have a nationalist tendency still. That they are a nation. They don't want to be an empire. Although there are some people in religious institutions, they want to have these alliances with the Shia in Lebanon and so on. But they see it as a defense mechanism. It's like strategic defense. Yes. We have our people on your side too, so don't try to do stupid things to us. We have people in Bahrain, we have people here. But that's not really, their intention is not to start a war with those countries. It's just a defense mechanism. But the Iranians are starting to try to stand on their feet, and they have not given up the idea of developing the nation. They rebuilt the nuclear program. They are building infrastructure, water infrastructure, in collaboration with Russia and China. And that's why they're being attacked too. But it's part of the strategic game, because they want to get rid of Iran as another step into the direction of...
Yes, but I think...
I'm not saying that Khomeini was an agent.
I know what I'm thinking about, but I was just also wondering about when you said it was a war of, let's say, exhausting between Iraq and Iran for many years.
Yeah.
So I don't think Iran will go into that game again and let it happen again, because I think they have avoided at least 20 wars. When the US and Israel actually wanted a war, they actually was...
They know what the price
war,
is.
And they had avoided it.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about a very wise man's wording, saying, if you can avoid the enemy's attempt to initiate a war, it's actually a victory in a war.
Yeah.
So I think the next war, if it will break out any time, Iran has positioned itself very, very well, and it will not have the outfall that...
you see, these wars, the British and the latest American administration, they have not been fighting wars to win. These are wars to destroy. And what they want to destroy most of all is a world order based on this national sovereignty. They want to say the world order is us. We decide. We are the powerful guys. And we're going to demolish this. And then, of course, they have to use nice words like humanitarian. Tony Blair created these things. Because when he came to power, one of the first things he came out and said, it's time now to abolish the principle of the Peace of Westphalia. You know, the Peace of Westphalia, which came after the European religious war, the 30 Years' War, established the principle that nations are sovereign. Your religious practice, you decide over your own country. And that gradually became the basis for even the modern United Nations principle. It's a very important principle, that nations are sovereign, independent, they decide what they do with their economic policy, foreign policy, internal affairs. That's their own business. You can approach them diplomatically, but then they are totally, perfectly independent. And that they want to destroy. And therefore, in order to pass that imperial policy, they come with nice explanations, like humanitarian intervention. You want to protect the people of Iraq by killing them? You know? Stop their suffering, shoot them in the head. You know, it's like a horse or something. That's what they did. And then they have to come with a lot of lies. Now they have something called responsibility to protect. Say the Syrian regime is a failed regime. Why? Because it cannot protect its people against the terrorists we are sending. You know, it's a failed regime. It cannot protect its people. So we have to go take away the regime and protect the people.
They didn't do it themselves.
Yeah. Now this is a very well-known term: responsibility to protect.
Yeah.
And
No
politicians in Sweden and in Scandinavia, they repeat that. They don't, you know.
But no one ever asked them. You had the full control of Iraq and Afghanistan for so many years. Why didn't you
protect?
Also do these responsibilities?
Yeah. No, that's what I said. They don't go to win a war. They go to destroy.
Yes. But regarding Syria, which was actually the topic before, not to forget it. My personal view was, when I saw the uprising against Syria, was that he will fall, because there are so many powers. He is in a very weak position in many ways, and I think you said Russia had sent some warships there to support him, but that was only in case of there was a military intervention from outside. But I don't think there are any need for that. I think the guys inside Syria are doing their job very well.
Mm. Well, the thing is, that's what I said, the Turks and everyone else were disappointed because they thought that this regime will collapse because of the so-called peaceful demonstrations and that people don't like the regime. It didn't happen. The matter of fact is, in spite of everything, that this was like some sort of a police regime, people still, when they look at the alternative, they still think that they should stick to Al-Assad regime.
I'm of that opinion too, but still I don't think he will survive.
Yeah, but the Syrian institutions.
My support.
But I think this is it doesn't matter what you think in a certain sense. It doesn't matter. See, this is exactly the difference between our movement and everybody else. Everybody else sit on the sideline and then they say, you know, basically sitting like a betting game. What do you think happened? Should we bet $10? Who's going to win? You know, like if it was a football game, but it's not a football game.
Okay, well, I can say that I have met people who say these organizations, even as people sitting on the sidelines and just have a kind of lobby activity. That's all.
No,
I've met those people too.
But that's because they have no clue what we do.
Exactly.
And the point is that the question is not what is the fight of humanity right now? I mean, that's based and that is always, in a certain sense, a global question. What is the fight of humanity right now? What is going to determine the fate of humanity? If humanity makes it or not? That's the big game. And this is what everything that Hussein went through, that's what Syria is part of right now. It's a front line in that battle. And therefore the question is, how can we, where do you have a flank to intervene and help change the outcome of that big battle? And you don't know if you're going to win or lose. It's not a predetermined game. It's not like a computer game where you can decide beforehand how it's going to end up. Right? But so therefore you have to see how can I, in a certain sense, what should I support and how should we fight and how do we develop flags? Yes. Because else you get impotent. Else it gets to be this kind of, and that's how the game usually is played. That's what everybody is doing. Everybody is saying, but you can't beat the system. If the Americans and the British wants this, that's how it's going to end up. But that was in the old world. That was in the old world before Russia decided that their existence is dependent on stopping the old geometry. And therefore they cannot give in. And once the Russians have said that, the Chinese is going behind the Russians and says, we cannot give up this principle of national sovereignty. And therefore you have a totally different game. I mean, that's why it's not happening like everybody would predict, because we're in a different world now because of that setting.
I understand. I didn't raise this question because I was, let's say, against Assad. Actually, what I said, what I've said many times before was, Assad is the best alternative if you compare it to what those people who are against him will offer us. Surely, he's the best alternative, because what will happen, let's say, look at Iraq. Is the pre-war situation where we had a Saddam better than what we had afterwards? Of course. The area with Saddam was much better than what we have now in Iraq. You can say that all the institutions, everything is burned down. Nothing works right now in Iraq. But you can still say in the time of Saddam it was better. So what I was trying to say is, I don't want to support those who want to make regime change. I'm against that, openly. So why I mentioned that with the Assad was falling was, we have to think about what will happen if he falls. He can fall in days, in weeks, in months, and still the Russians and China and other countries behind him, maybe they will see that there won't be that confrontation, because he will be overwhelmed from inside Syria, not in a direct military conflict.
But
no, the forces inside Syria could not overthrow him. That's why they went to Plan B, and now they want to go to Plan C by direct military intervention. And because internally the government is very strong, its institutions are intact. You didn't have, like in Libya, people just, as soon as there were demonstrations, all the ambassadors left, the UN ambassador left, the foreign minister took the first plane. The whole regime just, it's like an onion, it's peeling. But it didn't happen in Syria, because it's a totally different situation, totally different system there. And also, the government has support in the population, not only because they are afraid of the alternative, but because when they look at other countries, other governments, how they have been running the situation. I mean, Syria is not a rich country. They also have a huge unemployment among the youth. It's a desperate situation, like everywhere in the world today. But what the government has been trying to do is they're trying to have a balanced policy. They have a very strong agricultural sector. They have tried to build some internal industrial processes, to produce their own goods. And then they did not rely on foreign institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, the EU, and they don't have any debt. So they have had a balanced economic policy, but it was not going forward because the type of technology and credit they needed, they couldn't get from the West or from Russia. I mean, Russia had its own problems, and the Chinese. So the government actually, when the people look around them in the region, they see that this was a very reasonable government they had, and the policies were very reasonable given the circumstances. But that's not, of course, what people hope for. People hope for something different, but they look around them and then they say, well, better this way than that. As you say, Saddam Hussein. I mean, I fled from Saddam Hussein and my family. I mean, people killed in my family.
It was a terrible
yeah,
time.
but there you look at, Iraq is not Saddam Hussein. That's what I said about Iran and Khomeini. It's a nation. It has an identity. It has aspirations. It has dreams. And as long as that lives in the population, not in the regime, then that's a powerful nation, potentially. It has a potential for the future. People in that region, they have dreams. We lived war. Since I opened my eyes, we had wars. We had the Civil War in the 70s when I was 4 years old, 71. I saw tanks in the streets. I was living in the Kurdish area. And they had this civil war a few years. And then we had the Iraq-Iran war. And then we had the Kuwait war. But all these years, we're saying, in the middle of the war, everybody was saying, well, one day the war will stop. And we will be the Japan of the Middle East. We will build the country. We'll have technology. We'll have this. We will have that. We are a rich country. We have educated people. So you have a sense in the nation that we are a great nation, but we need an opportunity to grow. So, and that is what was inside Iraq during even the Ba'ath regime. They still had in the leadership of the Iraqi government that they had that idea that Iraq is a powerful nation. We should sell oil, buy technology, and make Iraq a powerful nation industrially, build infrastructure. I mean, in the middle of the Iran-Iraq war, there were foreign companies building highways, railway, waters, projects, the best hospitals in the region, and so on and so forth. That's an identity of a nation. That's what they want to crush. In Europe, they want to crush it by the environmentalist idea.
What's left now? I think you cannot even...
No, that's what... Yeah,
of that,
if they crush the individual and the nation as the soul of the nation, then they have succeeded. And they have gone a long way now. And Iraq is a huge pile of money. There's a lot of money in Iraq, but there's no electricity, no running water, no railway, no transport, no healthcare, but a lot of money. And that's destroying the Iraqi society. Besides this thievery going on and the sectarian stuff, everybody steals for his own group. So there's a big pile of money and everybody steals for his group.
I think the fundament as a nation is removed.
Yeah, it's being removed. That's where the danger is. But that's what the fight is about. But it's going on everywhere.
You can see all the historical, let's say, identities they had in themselves. The libraries, the museums, everything is robbed. Nothing's left. What you can recognize a nation with, everything is robbed. And I think that was also what happened in Afghanistan, what they are actually thinking about Syria too.
Yeah, but you see what happened in Iraq, this happened hundreds of times in history.
Materialism.
Hmm?
Materialism,
Yeah, no, but that the country can get destroyed. The libraries could get burned, like the Mongols did. They came and they burned all the books and the museum. Exactly what happened in 2003. They burned the books, the libraries, and the museums. They thought they can destroy the nation that way. But, people will rise again because there are things that are deeper. But what is important is that Iraq should be given opportunity to stand on its own feet. But as long as we have the current system in the world order we have today will not allow any nation to stand on its own feet or have any aspirations. Not even Denmark or Germany. They want to kill the idea of scientific and technological progress in Germany. There's a huge attack on Germany. It's going on for 30 years. They should give up nuclear power. They should give up space exploration. They should give up industrial development. They should give up helping other nations develop. It's a huge war on the German nation, but it's run in a different way than the war on Iraq. It's psychological, media, this whole environmentalist madness. So all nations are actually targeted, but what they want to kill is this idea of the human creativity that we societies can develop, that we can develop the environment around us, we can develop ourselves, we can build for the future. And not only build the earth, we can come out of earth and come to other planets. That's what the oligarchy wants to kill. say, no, you are a little animal. Your place is here, don't look up. You know? And this has been the fight throughout history.
But to realize these dreams,
Maybe we can just round it up and then we
Yeah.
can continue the discussion. Because I would like to thank you a lot. But before we thank you, I would like to have people's attention on an interview which Hussein did with Mohammed Mahfoud from the Syrian Friendship Union in Denmark, which is in on Arabic. It's out in cyberspace. Help us to spread it into the Arabic-speaking world. Help us to spread actually everywhere you can.
sure.
And we are very active as well in Denmark, so you can actually join the book tables, join
I
us
have
to
done that.
mobilize.
I have shared it a lot of places.
Yeah. And help us to actually to speak with other people outside and whatever, you know, at the universities, on the streets, and so. But I would really like to thank you a lot for your presentation, for the discussion, and for being here. And
Thank you for
And hopefully
allowing me
we
to
have
speak.
you again.
Yeah.
Especially if you come here with ready to drink champagne, and it's a long time since we had the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
The time when people felt now history changed. Now we really have a brand new opportunity.
Yeah.
But it might not be so long away if we fight.
Yeah. We stick to the juice.
We can celebrate.